Andrew never believed in fate, but meeting Linda made him reconsider. Their relationship had always been easy, no pressure, no grand expectations. They were 5 years into marriage and happy to take life as it came. Children? Maybe someday. For now, they enjoyed each other's company, quiet mornings, and the slow rhythm of their shared life. What Andrew loved most about Linda wasn't just her laugh or the way she curled up with a book for hours, it was her inability to lie. Every time she tried, her cheeks would flush an impossible shade of red, like a living alarm system. He discovered this worked during their third date. He had asked her if she really liked sushi, and she had confidently said yes, while her face turned beet red. She confessed seconds later, giggling, "Okay, I hate raw fish, but I didn't want to seem picky." From that moment on, Andrew knew he'd never have to guess with her. She was an open book, blush and all. Sometimes, he'd ask silly questions just to see the pink rise in her cheeks. "Did you eat the last cookie?" Her face would betray her before her lips moved. It became their game, their secret tell. In a world full of masks and half-truths, her honesty, even involuntary, felt like magic. Of course, Andrew never imagined that one day, that same blush would break his heart. But back then, in the quiet moments of morning coffee and inside jokes, all he saw was a woman who couldn't hide the truth even if she tried. And he loved her all the more for it. Spring arrived with soft winds and early blooms, and with it, a certain restlessness in Linda's eyes. She started talking more and more about taking a vacation. "I just need some sun, some salt in the air," she said, half laughing, half serious. "This winter has been endless." Andrew wasn't much of a beach person. The idea of sitting in the sand, sweating under the sun, sounded more exhausting than relaxing. More importantly, work was crushing him, deadlines piled up like bricks. A trip was the last thing on his mind. But Linda? She was persistent, circling resorts in travel magazines, sending him dreamy pictures of turquoise water. When he kept hesitating, she changed her angle. "How about I go with Lisa this time?" she suggested one night, her eyes gleaming. "You know her husband, her little boy, she could leave him with his grandma. Just us girls. Then when you finally get time off, we can go somewhere you like. Maybe the mountains?" Andrew paused. He trusted Lisa. She was grounded, married, the type who packed extra sunscreen and always called home. It didn't feel suspicious. Just two friends trying to escape the lingering chill of winter. So he agreed. He booked the tickets, reserved the hotel, even handed Linda extra cash with a smile. "Get something nice. Bring me back a little piece of the ocean," he joked. The morning of the flight, he drove both women to the airport. Linda kissed him quickly before walking off into the crowd, waving back with that radiant, excited smile. Andrew didn't know it then, but that moment, her walking away, would be the last time he saw their marriage exactly as it had been, simple, sweet, untouched by suspicion. The first week of Linda's trip was a cascade of sunshine and smiles. Andrew's phone lit up every few hours with photos, sunsets melting into the sea, Linda holding coconuts, or posing with wind-blown hair near a boat dock. Each message ended with some version of "wish you were here." He smiled at the pictures, happy she was enjoying herself. He replied with short updates from the office, adding the occasional "miss you too." It all felt normal. But as the second week rolled in, the stream of updates dried up. At first, Andrew didn't think much of it. He was swamped at work, juggling a tight deadline and barely keeping up with meals, let alone texts. A simple "how's the weather?" here, a "sleep well" there, enough to keep things connected. Still, the silence began to hum in the back of his mind like static. Linda had always been expressive, especially when traveling. Now, there were whole days where she sent nothing. No pictures. No little notes. Just quiet. When she finally returned, Andrew picked her up at the airport. She looked refreshed, but also distant in a way he couldn't quite name. As they drove home, she gazed out the window and said, "It just doesn't feel the same here. The air's different." Back at home, over dinner, Linda recounted parts of the trip, but vaguely. "We mostly relaxed," she said. "Lisa was kind of boring after a while. I really wished you were there." Andrew smiled, but something inside him stirred. Her stories lacked detail. Her usual spark when describing food, people, and places, absent. He told himself not to overthink it. Maybe she was tired. Maybe he was just being paranoid. But deep down, he knew, something had changed. They got home just before sunset. Linda unpacked while Andrew sank into the bed, letting the quiet hum of the TV fill the room. He called out playfully, "So, did you bring me anything?" There was a pause. He heard the rustle of fabric stop. Then her voice floated out, a bit too quickly. "Oh, yes. I brought you a bottle of wine." She walked out holding it up like a prize, wrapped in a bright red t-shirt. Andrew raised an eyebrow. "Nice packaging," he joked, taking the bottle. Then, tugging the shirt off, he studied it. It was soft, slightly worn, not new. Not souvenir shop material. "What's this shirt from?" Linda laughed, but her voice had a nervous edge. "Oh, the vendor wrapped it like that to stop it from breaking. I thought it was weird too, but whatever, right?" She turned away before he could look closer, diving back into the suitcase, her face hidden. Andrew let it go. For the moment. But later that night, lying alone in bed while Linda showered, the scene replayed in his mind. The hesitation. The frozen moment. The odd shirt. He picked it up again. It smelled faintly like cologne. Not Linda's perfume, not his own. Something unfamiliar. And the wine. It wasn't the kind Linda usually picked. She hated reds, always said they gave her headaches. So why this bottle? Why that shirt? The thoughts wouldn't stop. A slow, gnawing doubt had begun to take root. It wasn't just a bottle of wine anymore. It was a question wrapped in fabric, and Andrew couldn't shake the feeling that the answer was one he wouldn't like. The next day, Andrew couldn't concentrate at work. His eyes skimmed over spreadsheets, but his mind kept drifting back to that red t-shirt, and Linda's face when she saw it. He hated the feeling. Suspicion had never been part of their marriage. But something about the way she froze, the stammer in her voice, the whine, it didn't fit. That night, after Linda fell asleep, Andrew sat in the living room with his laptop. Just a quick look, he told himself. Maybe to prove he was overthinking, he searched the name of the hotel on social media. Their Instagram feed was active, filled with polished photos of couples, sunsets, poolside parties, and themed dinners. Most posts were harmless, until he found it. A blurry snapshot from a nighttime beach show. There were fire dancers in the background, music, laughter. And in the crowd, front row, stood two familiar figures, Linda and Lisa, laughing, drinks in hand. But Andrew didn't focus on them. His eyes locked onto the performer on stage, a young man in a red t-shirt. The exact shade. Same faded graphic. Same neckline. He zoomed in to be sure, and then it hit him. That shirt hadn't come from a store. It wasn't packaging. It was personal. The pieces fell into place, slow and heavy. Linda's sudden silence during the second week. The awkwardness when unpacking. The wine she'd never drink. The shirt wrapped around it, his shirt. Andrew sat back, heart pounding. He didn't have proof, not the kind you could print out and slam on a table. But he had something more powerful, a gut feeling. And a wife who blushed every time she lied. Andrew came home that evening with a storm brewing behind his calm eyes. He found Linda in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone, humming softly. She looked up and smiled. "Hey, I was thinking we could maybe order some." He cut her off with a single look. She blinked. "Andrew? What's wrong?" He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Just answer one thing, Linda," he said, his voice low, almost too even. "Did you cheat on me during that trip?" Her expression twisted instantly. "What? What kind of nonsense is that?" "Yes or no," he replied, eyes locked on hers. Simple question. "No," she snapped, arms crossed. "I would never." But before the words even finished leaving her lips, her cheeks ignited in a flush of scarlet. Andrew stared, watching the truth bloom across her face like a wound she couldn't hide. There it was. No denial could compete with that unmistakable sign. He shook his head slowly. "You knew. You knew you couldn't lie to me and still you tried." Linda's voice cracked. "It didn't mean anything. I was lonely. I missed you." "Stop," he said sharply. "You made your choice. Now live with it." She stepped closer, tears filling her eyes. "Please. Can't we just talk?" But Andrew had already walked into the bedroom and returned with a small duffel bag. "Pack what you need. Tonight." She looked stunned. "You're really kicking me out?" "I'm asking you to leave," he corrected. "Because if you don't, I might say something I'll regret." Linda didn't argue. She packed in silence, shoulders trembling, and just like that, she walked out of the house, and out of the life they had built. The house felt hollow after Linda left. Her toothbrush was still in the bathroom. A sweater clung to the back of a chair. But Andrew moved through the silence like a man walking through smoke, still dazed, but breathing clearer with each passing day. Filing for divorce wasn't easy. It felt like failure carved in ink. But deep down, he knew it was the only path forward. Trust once shattered rarely rebuilds, especially when the truth had to be dragged out of a red-cheeked lie. Mutual friends talked. Word spread. Linda had moved into a small apartment on the edge of town, bare, gray, nothing like the life she once had. Some said she looked miserable, regretful. Others said she tried to act normal, but everyone could tell something inside her had collapsed. Andrew never replied to her few messages after the divorce papers were signed. He didn't need closure. He already had it, wrapped in a t-shirt and soaked in a lie. There were quiet nights where he still stared at the ceiling, replaying it all. The wine. The silence. Her glowing cheeks. He'd loved her once, truly. And in a twisted way, he still mourned that love, even if the person attached to it no longer deserved him. But he also felt lighter, stronger, wiser. They hadn't had kids. That, at least, was a mercy. No tiny hearts to scar, no custody battles, no birthdays spent apart. And just before he closed that chapter for good, he made one final move, a calm message to Lisa's husband. Nothing accusatory, just a quiet heads up. Because if this pain taught him anything, it was this: sometimes the smallest lie carries the deepest betrayal, and the brightest cheeks hide the darkest truths.